Well, hi, hello, and welcome to Turn Service into a Growth Engine. Today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Salesforce and Accenture and produced by SmartBrief. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with SmartBrief at Future B2B, and I am so happy that I get to be your moderator for this conversation today because we are going to unpack how service can be a part of your organization's growth strategy. And that starts with understanding what service means, especially, this is important, good service, right? What is the value of service and how can you use AI to design a thoughtful and effective user experience? So today, with the help of our expert panelists, we will assess the traditional view of service and how it operates, and we will explore how a shift in mindset along with the right innovative ideas and tools can drive a dramatic change in your organization's personalized service offerings and best of all, make service into that catalyst and driver for growth. So this is going to be a fascinating conversation. We have a lot to get into, a lot to explore. I want to get our speakers on out here with me very quickly, but I want to get through a few housekeeping pieces of information that are going to help you get the most out of your time here with us today. So let's start out with the questions window. That's the first stop on our little guided tour here. I want to make sure you guys are all using this questions window today because our speakers are going to be watching the questions come in, and not only are they going to present and provide information and discuss and go through all of this with you, they are going to do their best to answer you over live chat as well. We've got some team members here responding to questions on live chat. So we want to hear from you. Make sure you've got those questions coming in. I see a few of you chiming in already. Good morning or afternoon or evening, Corey, Luna, and Gilbert, Jorge, all the many places you're joining us from. Luna, a little bit earlier for you over there in California, but getting a bit late over in Wisconsin, I guess. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us. Please do keep those highs and hellos coming. Let us know how you're doing, how your day's going. And as we go through our session, make sure you're getting those questions in. We absolutely want to hear from you. Now, that questions window is also the best place to reach out and let us know if you do have any technical issues. Now, I do want to remind you all that a browser refresh generally clears out any of the tech gremlins. But if that browser refresh does not work, if the gremlins are really clinging on tight today, no problem. You're going to post in that questions window, let our team know, and we will be there to help you out. All right, the last stop on our guided tour of your audience console, we're going to hang out in the handouts tab. Make sure you check out some of those cool resources and follow-ups to our conversation here today. Make sure you've got those open, downloaded, and hold on to those because you will want to dig in a little bit more after we wrap, I promise. And if all of that wasn't enough to get excited about today, we also have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Now, you do need to be here in live attendance in order to qualify to win. So make sure that you're live and present. That's what we're looking for. So hang tight and stay tuned for that. You also do need to meet the SmartBrief prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, we've got them listed for you in the handouts tab. So you can head on over to the handouts tab and you will find them all waiting for you there. All right. Well, with that, I think it's time we wrap up the housekeeping and get our speakers on out here with me because I am pretty excited to get into this conversation. Today, we are going to be chatting with Matt Kravitz, Chief Customer Officer, Service Cloud at Salesforce, also with Nick and Popat, Managing Director at Accenture, and Brett Emstahura, Managing Director at Accenture as well. Now, that's a lot. We've got a great crew here with us. We got a lot to cover, so I think it's time to jump in. Let me just get all of us on out here with me, and we'll get started. All right. Well, hey guys, welcome. So happy to have all of you here with me today.
Hey, good to be here.
Happy to be here.
All right.
We got a lot of fun stuff to dig into. I am so excited to get into this conversation. Before we do, though, I think it's important that we do maybe a little bit of a level set, a little foundational build. So, Nikin, I'm going to actually ask you to kick us off here and talk to us a little bit, help us in the audience understand the context of the market as it stands right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jess. So today we're here to talk to you about service. Now, this is a topic that three of us are incredibly passionate about. And we focus on this with our clients across a number of industries, geographies, and across every platform. So over the past few years, we keep hearing that the expectations of customer service is changing and that we need to pivot. Well, the bad news is the expectation has already changed. We're definitely seeing this across the board. Consumers have begun associating quality and brand with their service experience. Consumers now have a choice with regards to providers. And when they can't be serviced the way they want to be by their traditional providers, they're open to market disruptors. So the goal of today's discussion is to help drive a different mindset. So mindset shift on what service is versus what it could be. Not to take away from our marketing and sales colleagues, but what you'll find is service will be a powerful growth engine in your organization. And we're excited to share our thoughts and our views on that.
Yay. Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to get I like that. I feel like all the marketing people are just like, oh. Okay, so there's a lot to dig into here, and I want to come back to that point of service because I think you were sort of, getting into the importance of it, but what does that actually mean? Maybe we have different understandings of what good service is. So how are you defining it for the context of our conversation today?
Okay, so you asked a hard question, is how to define what good service is. All right, so I
Yes.
think maybe let's think of maybe a few like examples of good service, right?
I like that.
When I'm not struggling here, but there's a few of them. So like, okay, for example, Amazon, right? I'm an Amazon Prime customer. I love it. When I'm not using their music platform or their video platform, I get a prompt. Did you know we've got new shows available? Did you know that you're not using half of our service? I absolutely love it, right? It's proactive, it's engaging, it helps me get more out of the platform. Maybe even a traditional one or a simple one. This is just because it's the fall season. Having a tree trimming service. I got a call the night before saying, look, we know we're coming to trim your tree. You've had this scheduled for a couple of months, but you know what? I completely forgot. They don't really need me there, but the fact that they sent a text message and let me know, I can now plan my day around it, make sure I can anticipate a bit of noise because it's going to be loud. Probably let my neighbors know, right? I don't know if they want tree branches falling in their garden all day, but I wanted to let them know. So that's just something proactive. And that's what I think is good customer service. I don't know. I don't want to say I'm struggling to find good ones, but it's maybe a
It's,
little easier to find bad ones or
I was going to say it's interesting because I think the bad ones probably stick out more. I mean, to me, the idea that you get bad customer service is what you write about, you talk about. Very, very infrequently do you brag about good customer service, but you almost always hear about the bad, right? I mean, I can think of an example moving into this house where I had an internet provider reach out to me with all of these different options for, speeds that were available. And when I called and selected the service that I wanted, it wasn't available in my neighborhood. So the disruption, the distinction between what good service is versus how to tune out the noise and
Mm.
separate when you experience bad service is important. And I think that's what we want to get to today, right? And what are the tools at your fingertips that kind of enable you to do that? And it's not just what good service is, but I think it's also where, right? Where is good service? Because when you have good customer service, sometimes it feels invisible and sometimes it feels very intrusive. And both of those can be true and helpful. And I could think of, a conference that I was at last month where I was staying in a hotel and the lobby called me at 6 o'clock in the morning because there was an issue with plumbing upstairs. And so I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize, and I let it go to voicemail. And then I got a text, and then I called down to the lobby to respond when I realized what was going on. And I met with a manager. So right there, I've got in person, I've got via text, I've got a voicemail. They walked me through the situation, how they were going to resolve it for me, and then they deposited rewards points into my account, which I have already set up another trip for, right? So these are experiences now where they took a very disruptive, very early conversation with me where I had to move all of my things, pack up, relocate. Now they've turned it into a value stream for them because they've given me just enough points for me to book a trip without being able to cover the whole trip. So I think when we talk about these ideas of what good service is and where it exists, those are points that I would draw on. It's almost like there are instances where I want it to be in my face and I want service to dazzle, and there are instances where the best service in my mind I never have to think about.
Ooh, that's interesting. Okay, so I'm hearing proactive, I think was one of the key things. And then do you think personalized is that as important?
I could,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Go
and I
ahead.
could give some context to the other side of the coin, which is reactive service, which
Ooh.
is much more common.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of industries are not conducive to proactive service, and many of us are really left building service strategies, which is something has gone wrong. Now, somebody's entered into the digital footprint or into the voice channel, trying to contact an organization.
Yeah.
I think that's where there's a tremendous opportunity to really look at the basics of what we need to execute on, which is making sure that we have an authenticated experience so we know who you are and we can personalize, and most importantly, that we can help you execute action to get something resolved. And a lot of service experiences that we'll reference today and some of the frameworks we'll walk through are going to help organizations get through, like, don't just tell me what to do. For example, what's the status of my order? We're just so used to interacting with, well, log into my account, scroll down, hit the order section, go do it yourself. I think the evolving nature of service expectations is like, stop telling me what to do and actually help me do something yourself. So we'll reference this sort of multi-tiered framework later today around, like, how do you get from a level one service, which is like everything's my burden, to technology aiding somebody, which is a level three use case. So there is structure around this stuff. So I love this sort of two sides of the coin, which is that we have to think proactively and we have to think reactively. Certainly Salesforce and Accenture have capabilities that can enable both of those journeys.
Ooh, I'm really
Matt,
excited about that.
Matt, I love that. Sorry,
Yeah.
I latch on to that. I absolutely love that. Like, especially bringing service to the customer where they want it to be. So it's become obvious that like our traditional view of service has always been like a place to go or a call center you dial into or self-serve. And to date, we continue to invest ways to make that easier. But Matt, you're absolutely right. We need to change that narrative, right? Like, what if we bring service to the customer? Like, what if, like our bank knows where you are. Like when you walk into a branch, they know when you log into online banking, they know exactly where you are at all times, right? Like they know, sorry, I feel like Steve Jobs holding up, the first iPhone, but you get the idea. Why can't we bring the experience to the client proactively, right? And that, I don't think that means, sorry?
No, I was just going to say, what's funny about that, though? You pulled that up. I think these are giving sophistication to the end user too, right? I mean, the opportunity for self-service is ever growing, right? And so when Matt, what you were talking about in offering some of those proactive opportunities too, like the sophistication of a customer is significantly greater because of the opportunities that we have at our fingertips, right? Like it's almost like I expect for nominal issues to be able to go in and resolve them myself, right? Even up to travel change. I mean, think about changing a flight. I can log into the flight app and do that myself, right? Which is, there is easily a period worth remembering where that was a phone call and probably several different agents that you were talking to do something like that. So I love that idea of sophistication too.
Well, this is really, and Brett, I was thinking back actually to your example of the internet, and I'm moving and getting new internet, and I accidentally hit self-install, and I was angry about it at the start because I don't want to install this. I want someone to come to my house and install it and make sure it's great. But then you know what? I actually found the more I thought about it that because now I can do it on my time. Anyways, I think it's interesting that as your customer base may not even know what they what they prefer, and I think we're fighting these internal battles of do it ourselves and provide it to me, and maybe we're right in the middle of this transition, and so it sounds like, Matt, from what I was hearing from you, we've got options for both. And kind of doing better options for what exists in terms of help yourself, and then enhancing to that level 3 tier of reaching out. Okay, great. I just making sure we're all pumped and excited about it. Which, on that note, okay, so I think we've done a great job of kind of setting some foundation. We've talked a little about what makes good service and where we go with good service, and where we've seen that, and a little bit about where we've seen some bad service. So that's a great place to start. I'm wondering if this is a good time to transition. Nick, and I know you've got a demo for us, and I think seeing things in action is really always the best way to go.
Absolutely, right. And as I kind of set that up, like Matt and Brett are absolutely spot on in terms of how things are evolving. I think we're even going further, I'd say, in the last 2 years where service, like what if we could change the way we think about it even further, right? Make it easier to access and change it from a physical location or a platform or device, maybe turn service into maybe more of a dialogue, like a conversation. So, we use Alexa and we use Google to like figure out our favorite tune or turn on the lights or change the room temperature. But what if we could feel like having a dialogue with our service provider is how service is going to be managed going forward, right? And I got a demo, so I'll flip it up. I think it's easier to see it a little bit and get an idea of what we're thinking about. So let me just pull this up. All right. So I'm going to play this demo, but I'm just going to talk a little bit in the background, right? So let me just set it up. So think about the client journey, right? We're going to set up a client journey here. It's a hypothetical scenario, right? Try and imagine a macroeconomic or an external event that happens. Let's just say, the U.S. Federal Reserve has a mortgage rate change, and that's a favorable opportunity for a banking client. So the demo you see here is going to show a dialogue between an advisor and a client. We're going to show the view the advisor sees and what the client experiences. So what you're seeing right now is the client profile and the view of the service agent. Okay, and when the triggering event happens, you're going to very quickly see, pop up on the client's mobile phone, on their app. It'll show and notify the client that there's been an interest rate drop and there's an opportunity for their product to be in a more favorable position. It'll give her a couple options. How does she want to learn about this particular offer? Does she want to pay down her principal? Does she want to capture more cash flow? Does she want to book an appointment with her advisor? Or does she want to initiate a call with them right away? As we go into it, you'll see some richness. So I'm going to let it play, and then we'll go into it. Pay attention for the little cues and the little screens, the little pop-ups and changes on the screen. I'll go through the summary in a bit.
Good morning. This is Bank of One. Could I confirm who I am speaking with?
Hi, this is Caroline Baker.
Thank you, Caroline. Your voice authentication is also confirmed, and I have your profile information in front of me.
Great. Thank you. I received a notification that I have a lower interest rate on my mortgage. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I see that the mortgage product you have just had the interest rate drop, so you have the option of paying down your principal or reducing your payments by $180 per month.
Okay. I would prefer to reduce my payments, please.
Certainly. We can have that effective in the upcoming payment cycle. Would you be interested in investing the extra cash into an investment fund?
I actually need to save for an upcoming trip, so need the cash to be accessible sometime in the next 10 to 15 months. So, do you have something that I can withdraw from with a lot of flexibility?
We have a high-interest e-savings account that has this flexibility.
Actually, that would be perfect. Could you auto-deposit the $180 per month into the e-savings?
Yes, we can. We will send you an email to confirm and authorize the change in your mortgage payments, as well as the monthly automated deposit into your e-savings account. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No, this is perfect. Thank you.
All right. So as the demo wraps up, there's a lot in that demo. So let me just a few key things to note. First, let's talk about the advisor and Salesforce experience really quickly, and then we can have a dialogue about the customer experience. So you probably noticed a few key elements. One, there's real-time call transcription. So the advisor is not having to take notes, not having to capture everything, not having to worry about making sure they capture every single conversation, or they miss anything when they review it later. The next best action, I don't know if you saw that on the corner of the screen, it identifies a new opportunity for e-savings so the advisor can immediately present it. Okay. The real-time call summary. This is my favorite. I know it sounds simple, but it's my absolute favorite. The advisor can scroll through the call transcription, but using Copilot and Agentforce, we've generated a summary of the content, the offer presented, and the confirmation of it. So we're able to get half the work done that the advisor needs to do in an automated way during the call. We're also able to auto-generate an email, as you see at the end of the demo, that the advisor could send immediately after the call. In this case, the bank wanted to have email acknowledgement and authorization for their new banking product before they can complete it. So depending on your organization, you can embed your DocuSign or anything else you might need to make sure that you're going through the right checks and balances, but it's an immediate follow-up. So that's kind of the advisor experience. But now I want to talk about kind of the client experience. So what was the client doing the entire time? Were they searching for their credit card number or their account number or their statement or having to authenticate my mother's maiden name or anything like that? No. It was a pop-up on their authenticated app, and all they had to do was have a conversation. What was the advisor doing? Were they typing notes frantically, trying to understand, hey, can you please authenticate? Can you please look into this account? What was the last 4 digits of this number? Were they having to look through offers constantly or look through knowledge articles? No. They just had to have a conversation about what the client's needs were. And what did the organization, what did the bank get out of this? Well, whenever we think about service, we always plan, and I know everybody's looking at me on the phone and probably thinking this is going to resonate. We always build to surge capacity. So we're able to manage the capacity of every channel by being proactive. I love the way Matt and Brett said it, being proactive is key. So we can proactively reach out to key client segments. We can basically control the degree and high value opportunities based on the organizations. We can control the service and narrative and the overall experience, right? So you get that very rich experience, and the time took about 2 minutes. Now, what was key is we made it relevant. The actual interaction originated from the benefit to the customer because it was a benefit they were getting. The opportunity, the e-savings came later. So again, always make sure the customer opportunity and the customer value is at the center of it. It then turned to an opportunity for an e-savings account, for CSAT score improvements, for better engagement, et cetera, right? Now, I know the example of the interest rate change is well coordinated with everything going on in the market and in the US and Canada, all over the world with interest rates dropping. However, this proactive service experience could be for when there's a new iPhone launch, right? Or when my father needs to get a new vaccine, right? Or get his refreshed vaccine. Like, can you imagine getting a proactive engagement depending on the industry or depending on the particular use case? So this is how you drive service to sales. And this is something I absolutely love.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to thank you for sharing that demo with us and walking us through. That's really. I want to hang out with the voice actors that you hired. Those are very.
But I was wondering, that was the most memorable thing of that video is the majestic sound of that service advisor.
If you can please access your phone now.
Where do we get that voice talent, Nicken?
I know it's yeah, I will say it's definitely part of the service experience.
Right.
Besides the voice was compelling. I'll tell you what else was compelling was it was a very tight, relevant example of the power of sort of the agent-facing capabilities of Einstein. And this is the traditional capabilities, especially for organizations that want to drive value through the voice channel. And banking is a terrific example of that. Same with retail and any business that wants to grow. Leveraging the voice channel is huge, and recommendations. And these are Einstein for service capabilities. So this is what we've released probably back in April. So, I mean, these are pretty mature capabilities at this point. What we'll also talk about is the sort of the missing 800-pound gorilla in the room that we haven't acknowledged yet, which is Agentforce. And so there's two major capabilities. I mean, you could sort of look at, if I want to really focus on agent productivity, Einstein for Service unlocks tremendous value. And this is sort of what we just walked through in that demo. From the other end, we have Agentforce. And what just got released last week, or in early November, I guess, I mean, time is passing, is autonomous agents. And if we're trying to grow the business, one thing that we have to do is to strip out contacts that aren't driving value. So even in banking, there are things like, what's the status of my loan? What's the latest interest rate? Or some questions that just a human isn't adding value to. And if we can automate those, it helps. I also have a slide. And just to even give some additional context, I work for Salesforce, so I didn't get a chance to introduce myself yet. Salesforce always has slides, although I'm sure Accenture always has slides as well.
And they're great slides. You guys always have great slides.
I don't.
I
don't.
We're setting the bar low.
Well, they're not beautiful. They're great in terms of content, but I am known for not having beautiful slides. But I am on the product team over at Service Cloud. And also, I'm a former customer. I spent 5 years running the Salesforce program over at Hulu and later Disney Streaming. So half the things I'm going to say, I'm sort of wearing a Salesforce hat, and a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about from strategy and execution, how to run a program, really are going to call back to running a Salesforce program. So this is my Salesforce hat. And a lot of us, there's so much press, there's so much attention on Agentforce, but I don't think everybody has a consistent, easy definition of what is Agentforce. And Brett, I'm not going to put you on the spot here. I'm going to give you the answer here. Now you're going to know what the tight answer is.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Not going to do that. So now you're going to know. Agentforce is actually 4 things. Okay. So you have two buckets of these things. It is a set of tools. So half of our audience today, we're builders. We're the people that are building these experiences. And yes, we want to show you how we can help you build in no code, natural language ways, how to build autonomous agents. This is when you really start to dig in, you'll learn about topics and instructions and actions. And this is where we define what these autonomous agents can do. We also have a reasoning agent. And a reasoning agent is sort of the brains behind Agentforce. And the first time that I was briefed on what Agentforce is, this to me was the most forgettable because it's like, I'm never going to go in, I'm never going to tweak the brain. I'm not a brain surgeon. So like, why do I care what a reasoning agent is? Reasoning engine. What actually happened was the very first time I was in our demo environment and I used this demo environment and it was for a pretend, demo solar company called Cirrus Energy. And I was going through a self-service scheduling, appointment scheduling flow. And I said to the bot, how about an appointment next week during breakfast? And with any bot today, including Salesforce's bot, the response would be, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Like, what is breakfast? But however, with this new autonomous agent, it was like, okay, well, we have 8 a.m. next Wednesday. I was like, how did it know? Where did it learn what breakfast was? And how did it return that time frame? It was the moment that I realized it was the difference between the past and today, meaning the future is the ability to reason a conversation. It's not, I don't understand, but it's like, yeah, let's get going. The other half, and this is what I get really excited about, is not so much the building part of it, but what do I get? And autonomous agents, this is the customer facing portion of this is once you build it, you publish it on a digital channel. And these are the digital workers. So specifically in the service world, it's called ASA. So now we could all start using that during the call today. It's ASA. It's an Agentforce service agent or autonomous service agent, probably more accurately. But there are two other autonomous agents that also are available. We have Personal Shopper, which is a commerce autonomous experience, and also an SDR, which is a sales development representative to drive sales as well. So I'm very focused on service, so I really care about ASA, but there are two other wonderful capabilities as well. And lastly, there are assistive features, and this is just what we saw in the demo, but there are some new things coming because everything that we saw in Nitin's presentation was not generative AI. It is the traditional Einstein features, which are still terrific. And I personally believe you have predictive AI and you have autonomous AI, generative AI should be running in parallel just based on the job to be done or the use case. It's not one or the other. And it's how we get sort of show we have predictive and generative AI running. And what I'm excited about is the looming general availability of what we call the service planner, which is whatever we've defined through our topics, instructions, and actions can actually help the internal CSR in the demo that we just saw, for example, with that service advisor, the financial advisor, helping them walk through what the job to be done is and what they should do and helping them execute on their job as well. It's like having your own personal, advisor or co-pilot, but it's much more than a co-pilot, which is very, yesterday, very.
Having your own agent, your own personal agent. Like
Exactly.
I love the branding.
An agent for an agent.
Right?
I mean, this is the hyperloop. It's like when you see a Zoom screen and it's like you see 60 screens. I mean, that's what we're creating is agents that have agents that have agents. I mean, boy, is the future going to get wild.
And we can give you the voice.
Now we know.
There you go.
Okay, first of all, great slides. Well done. That was
They look better than expected. Always said low expectations.
low
Okay.
expectations. You get an A+ from me on that. This is okay. And also, I'm realizing I introduced you guys at the start, but just names and titles, which I feel like doesn't really capture the full. And so we should have stopped. And Matt, thank you for the reminder there. We're going to do this as an inside out webinar. So now we're halfway through. Nitin and Brett, do you want to give a little context beyond name and title for yourselves as well? Nitin, maybe I can ask you to start and then Brett.
Yeah, absolutely. Managing director at Accenture. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for over 10 years now and really focused the last 10 or 15 years of my career on sales and service transformation.
Yeah.
So something, again, very passionate about. This is what I live and breathe. And excited to be here.
Love it.
And Thanks, Jess. Brett Stahura, also a managing director. I've been with Accenture for coming up on 20 years. Really focused on the service and reimagining experience space. So, partnering with Salesforce, we had a number of clients, and this topic, as Nick said at the top, is near and dear to my heart. So, I'm happy to be here.
I love this. I feel like, at conferences when you start talking to someone and you're like 10, 15 minutes and you're like, oh my gosh, who are you? I don't actually know who you are. We're all over the place. But I love this, and I'm gonna transition a little bit because I want to, we're kind of getting close to the end of time already. Speaking of things flying by, we're already approaching the end of the year, and we're approaching the end of our webinar. So as we kind of get into our last little bit here, I'd love to talk a little bit about value and just kind of get into what should the audience be walking away when they're thinking about value. And Brett, I'm going to tag you in for that. Talk to us about
I
value.
appreciate it. Well, I mean, I think, we've hit on a lot of the points,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you've heard from the demo that Nick ran and what Matt just walked through. I think my biggest takeaway that we keep kind of reinforcing, and Nick and I were just talking about this the other day, like there's never going to be less disruption than today, right? That's the biggest thing. I mean, you heard even in what Matt talked about, the demo that we had set up, and that demo was created within the last 2 months. Matt already has new capabilities coming out, right? Like the roadmap accelerates, and AI gives us a platform to continue to do that. We derive value when services is personal, when service is desired. We find what's good for the business when we find what's good for the customer. And so to me, I think those are the biggest points. I think we've talked today at length about where those examples exist out in the ecosystem. I think there are certainly institutions that are doing it, well. There are some that are trying to figure it out. And what we're here to talk about is kind of that glide path, because it's not a quantum leap from a rotary phone to generative AI. There are stair steps and things to take advantage of, but the mindset shift that Nick started this conversation with, I think is where it all begins.
I like glide path. I'm stealing that. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No, I love it. And when Matt was going through his slides, by the way, love the slides. The only thing that trumps those slides is the characters you have that Salesforce comes out with. I love those characters. They're a huge hit. But exactly to Brett's point, I try and think of what are the key things you need, and he said he nailed it, personal, desired, and good for the business, good for the customer. When I think of desired, that the reason that resonates with me is come on, we've all been in the industry a while. We know the feedback we get when we talk about AI, automation. Everyone worries about how much data does the company have on this particular customer. So if it's something desired, I feel it's not just forgiving. I think customers want you to have that information and want you to help find better ways to serve them. So my favorite example is Starbucks. All right, it's that time of year. I'm going to get my little pop-up on my app saying it's, your peppermint mocha, it's coming out in the next week or two, a reminder, probably a promotion. They have my data. They use it. They know I appreciate it. And quite honestly, the result for me is desired because I don't want to miss out. It's my favorite drink of the year and they know about it. So when we talk about privacy, they know our habits and they really, really do. But if the end result's desired, we associate the organization as a positive use of our data and that proactive customer engagement. So, I think, how do I phrase this up? Whenever you think about a use case that you're going to use a customer's data and create an action, you want the end result for the customer to feel I want to be served by this. That's what you want your customer to say about that use case. It's yes, they want to be served in this way. And I think if you stick to that, that's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Sure. Yeah, I'll add my lens on this as well. This is something we're continuing to refine in the product organization is trying to figure out what type of a customer defines different types of values. And it's important to acknowledge, even within our audience today, that there's tremendous variation in service strategies. And one sort of framework that we have is to look at service strategies and come up with 3 primary buckets. And an example is, think about organizations that have very low complexities in their service operations. Think about your, UPS and FedEx. So the complexity of these cases, it's a high volume contact center. So it's 10 minutes or less. You get the status of your package, you reroute your package. Complexity is low. So if you're a consumer, the value that I want is that it has to be easy and fast, right? I don't need cross-sell, upsell. I don't need deep personalization. Just get it done. On the other end of the spectrum, think about companies like Salesforce, NVIDIA, Hewlett-Packard. These are cases that are open for days and days. Nothing takes 10 minutes. 2%, right? And the expectation of what value is not so much around deflection, but it is proactive service, right? So it's like, oh, there's an incident related to you. But it also is that once you have me, don't ask me stupid questions. Don't say, do you have Sales Cloud or Service Cloud? All that should be there. In the demo that we saw gave a little bit of that contextualization as well. Everywhere in the middle, you have something interesting. You have action-based high volume contact centers. You have knowledge-centered high complexity. In the middle, you really have order servicing organizations. This is where you have finance, you have Lululemon in retail, you have banking. Utilization of rich channels, and I really want to use that conversation to drive value. Value is defined by increase in Net Promoter Score, increase in brand love, making money. So we acknowledge, we meaning Salesforce and Accenture, as we go through and engage with you, there are variations of the definition of value. And we have a cheat sheet for you. And this one I did create, even worse. So it's just showing you there were some companies, very low complexity, some companies, very high complexities. In the middle, you have these order-based organizations in that there are 3 buckets. And as you look at the patterns of service, you could start to build things that work and don't work and what you would lean into based on these different patterns. So this is a good opportunity. If you want to take a screenshot, it is something that I would refer back to. But even around that second line from the bottom, which is where we get into the service agent, this is where ASA is. I put bot in parentheses because I think people still, this word agent, it's going to take a while to realize agents. Now we're not talking about service agents. We're talking about autonomous service agents. Is that it really differs between those first 2 columns. It's got to do something. It's got to get me to that level of actionability. Tell me the status of my package, the status of my order, the status of my flight, change the flight. Brett had referenced that about getting something done within the bots. Gets a very high complexity. There's not a lot of actionability when you're dealing with Salesforce, NVIDIA, F5, Dell, et cetera. Being able to answer a question that can look at structured and unstructured data drives huge value about trying to provide that next level of self-service. So the answer is it depends. It depends your value, where you sit. And hopefully this is a cheat sheet that can guide some decisions around where to get started. Although I think you need to do it all.
I love this cheat sheet. That's great. That's super helpful. And I think we have value is another one that's hard to put a sort of a definition around in some cases. And I think you guys have all done a really good job of providing some examples and some structure around that. I want to acknowledge that as much as I wish we could go with this conversation, we're going to have to kind of start to bring it to a close because I want to get to a few audience questions in the time that we have left. And I know there's so much more we could cover here. Before we get into the audience Q&A, Nick and Matt, I'm going to put you guys on the hot seat one more time. What I'd love is sort of like a headlines and highlight, like one highlight takeaway from Accenture and Salesforce and this conversation we're having today. If you could have the audience walk away really thinking about one thing, I'll ask Nick for you to start, and then Matt, you can bring us on home. What would that one thing be?
I'm going to give 3.
Oh, great. Right. One.
Okay.
Proactive service. I like it.
I'm thinking about this, but the customer.
Yep.
The customer and the customer. Okay, so it honestly, like that, it's incredibly important. Make the customer the center of every conversation you have and how you're going to demonstrate value to the customer directly. Matt was talking about proactive, reactive service, what we've had in the past with AI, what we've got with Gen AI. The reality is the barrier to entry for these use cases, the technology is there, and it's helped to bring that barrier down so incredibly fast. Mm-hmm. It's the mindset shift on what are those use cases that drive value to the customer. So that's my number one takeaway.
Okay, that was sneaky. That was a sneaky 3-in-1. I like it. Matt, what do you got?
So I'll build upon that because it's if you get 2 things together, it really solves a lot of the essence of what we're getting at. So if you have the customer over here, the second thing, and I don't think we spent enough time talking about it, and Nick can actually mention at the very end, is the use case, the job to be done. So the customer is important, but I would argue that even more importantly is like, what are they trying to get done? The digital experiences of what we would offer, even the channel optionality, is so specific to what they're trying to accomplish. Are they trying to purchase something or get the status of an order? Even that variation itself has so many different techniques that we would use in order to drive a better outcome. One is extreme self-service. The other is exposing an opportunity to move into a rich channel or voice because it's going to drive better sale and conversion. So it's not a summarization statement because I don't think we spoke about it a lot during the first session, but bringing all these things together that we talked about, if you know the customer, if you know their job to be done, whether or not it's through contextual service, what they were doing right before they entered into your service experience, or if you ask them, why are you here? It's something that we really fixated on the contact us page over at Hulu and Disney. Is like, tell us why you're here and we'll give you the best route, path, and customer experience. But those are two good takeaways that I would focus on.
I like that a lot. Those were great takeaways. And now I am going to put you back in the hot seat, all of you, because we have questions coming from the audience. Now, I do want to say, I know we were trying to keep things short and punchy today. We want to get everybody in, teach them a bunch of stuff and send them on their way. So we are not going to have a ton of time to get through all the questions. So for everyone that has asked a question, I'm going to try to get to as many as we can. Anything we don't get to, we will follow up with you in email. So we will make sure that all of your questions get sent to Salesforce and Accenture. So you will get answers back. So keep those questions rolling in. Team, are you ready to jump into some Q&A?
Let's do it.
Ready.
Resounding yeses. I like it. Nick, and when you were talking earlier about, we're right where we started, going all the way back to the beginning, you were talking about marketing and how service can really be as valuable, if not maybe more valuable in some cases. And I want to go back to that because right as you were saying that, we got a great question that came in. Could you provide an example of a company that has successfully transformed its customer service into a growth engine? And I'm going to add on to that. Could you give us any insight? And Nick, and if you want to start, that's great. But if anyone else has thoughts on this, I'd love to get any sort of specific strategies that you've seen be successful for organizations experiencing that growth engine out of service.
Okay. I think the easiest way to think about it is products I use and love using. So I know I mentioned it way earlier, glimpsed at Apple. Right. When we think about a company that really knows service and does it well and how it's driven growth in their organization, I think Apple's probably coming top of mind right now. There are many there's a handful that do it really, really well. And Brett and I and Matt were talking, there's a lot that don't, that need help. But Apple's probably one that I would say is a phenomenal organization on how they do service. Their entire ecosystem is based on driving value for the customer. Across every channel, they focus on the customer. Right. So whether it's the auto updates on your phone that you don't need to think about, or being able to leverage their ecosystem across all their products and services, they know what you have, they know the SKUs you have, they know the products you have, they know how you use it. Even the in-store experience is extremely white glove. So I think the two strategies I think you should always employ is one, obviously focus on the customer and how you're going to drive value to them, and meet the customer where they want to be met across every channel and every service process. And if you're driving value to them, you'll drive value to your organization, hands down. So Apple's probably my pick of the day.
Brett, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, when we think about this transformation, I think there are those that look at discrete channels and the total cost of ownership and just transitioning your IVR or implementing a CRM and not connecting it through the user experience, which is a big part of what we do in Accenture Song. And I think that, Jess, you asked who's doing it well. I think starting with the user experience is key, because if you're only looking at this transformation as a total cost of ownership play, and you're only trying to swap out legacy tech, or you're only trying to do one thing to maximize efficiencies in one corner of the organization, and you're not thinking about it, but thinking about it both from your customer's perspective, but also internally. right? The experience design has got to be leading edge, right? Just doing a lift and shift, just trying to reimagine what you're doing today, or trying to plaster over AI onto existing processes is a recipe for redo. So to me, I think having the experience and having the design of that experience at the forefront, and then moving into an implementation plan and the glide path that I talked about earlier, I think that's instrumental.
I do. We are so tight on time. We've got about 4 minutes left, but I'm going to sneak in a little question. That's not little at all. It's the question of personalization versus privacy, I think is really what this comes down to. So we got a question in from the audience saying, what are some best practices for how to use data to personalize customer service without making it feel intrusive? And this has come up a few times in our conversation today. And I'm wondering if maybe you guys could give us a few best practices or tips for everyone out there on kind of striking that balance, or does that balance even matter anymore? Do people care as long as they're getting the right service? What do you think?
I'll take a stab at it. I have a very simple guideline. Go back to the suggestion around focusing on the job to be done or the use case. So the expectation is that if I tell you why I'm here, the expectation is that you should have deep, intimate understanding about my specific question. And the moment that you extend beyond that barrier, it starts to get a little unwarranted. Let me give a practical example. So think about checking the status of my order. So at that point, give me the status, and understanding which order it is super helpful, and et cetera. Deep personalization around that. However, even checking the order status, and there's some of our customers, especially in retail, that in a human experience can use checking the status of your order into a revenue driving question. Your order is shipped, but Jess, guess what? We're also having a sale on hats. And I know you love hats. Too much, because you asked me about an order, and all of a sudden I use your past order history to give a specific recommendation. If you had said, what's on sale, what should I buy? So I think that's a good guardrail, is if it's data that's within the scope of the job to be done, fair game. When you start to cross the lanes, do it with your own caution.
That's a great guideline. I love that.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a great one, and that's resonating. And I do love hats. I love hats. Thank you so much. I am very sorry that I have to say that we're gonna leave things there. We are at the end of our time, and there's lots more questions. Again, we'll get answers back, so keep those coming in. Before I let the three of you run away, though, I do want to ask for an actual what can we do if we want to learn more? Because I think for a lot of folks in the audience, I'm sure you've sparked a lot, and they're ready to kind of keep digging in. So I'm going to ask Matt if I can get you to kind of give us a little bit of insight on next steps. And then Brett, I'm going to tag you in for what you would suggest the audience do to follow up.
Yeah, I was just as we were prepping for this, I Googled something. I Googled Agentforce Trailhead just to see what popped up. The second link was Quick Start. Build your first agent with Agentforce. Typically, I would advise everybody, go contact your sales team, go, attend this webinar. Don't do anything besides like getting your hands on this technology. That's the moment that everything changed for me, that I said, I can't believe how easy this is, how accessible this new generation of technology is. So my suggestion is focus on Agentforce. Focus on self-service is the quickest way to get time to value and get a return and help customers self-serve. So I would say, let me learn how to build my own agent, because once I build it, I start to understand what it is. Trailhead's a great place to start. That would be my number one tip.
Good hot tip. All right, Brett, what do you got for us? Are you Googling?
I think a lot of what we covered today is kind of building on what Accenture is driving with our Reimagined Service campaign. And so to me, that's the place foundationally where we start, right? I mean, if I was going to joke and say call Nick in, that's actually not a joke. But I think the Reimagined Service campaign really is how we think about this topic, Jess, and how we try to mobilize. And every story, every client is different, but I think foundationally that's where we kind of come in and measure where we are on the maturity curve, however you want to think about it. And so that's really where I would start.
Well, so call Nick in and Google
Exactly.
things. And yes, great. These are all great
Google
takeaways.
it.
Google Nick.
Google Nikin. That's your
There
key
you go.
takeaway. Call to action.
Yeah.
No, I really have very much, yeah, right. Nikin's like at the ready. I very much enjoyed talking to all of you today. And I want to say, this is my favorite kind of conversation where we get to just sort of go and see where it takes us and see what you guys are all excited about. And I want to thank all of you for bringing that passion and excitement to the conversation today, because it truly makes it an enjoyable experience for all of us. So thank you very much. And I hope we'll get to chat with all of you guys soon.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, guys.
Well, yeah, a big thank you to all of you out in the audience for asking some great questions, and a reminder again that we are going to make sure that you get answers back. So even if our speakers didn't get a response back to you, or the teams didn't get a response back to you today in our live Q&A or our live chat, you will get responses back. I just have to read out, we got a wonderful comment here from Zohal that I'm going to call out. Thanking our speakers and in particular Nick, and as he says, as someone working in the front lines of the banking industry, I found the emphasis on technology integration through modern banking solutions particularly impressive. These innovations facilitate seamless interactions and will enhance service efficiency, ultimately improving the customer experience. Zohal, I love that you called that out. That is exactly what we're here to do today, and I know our speakers really appreciate hearing that shout out. So thank you so much for that, and thank you to all of you for continuing to ask those great questions as we go through. If you're looking to learn a little bit more information right away, I'm going to recommend that you spend a little time in the handout section. There's a couple of links there. One, you can build your first Agentforce service agent in Trailhead. That is the perfect follow-up to this chat. Get in, start seeing things in action. So click on that. You can explore Agentforce. You can dig in a little bit more to the humans with agents driving customer success together, right? And how you can build that customized autonomous AI agent support for your employees and for your customers and get that 24/7 support you're looking for. So make sure you spend some time there. And there's also a resource center there exploring the partnership between Salesforce and Accenture. So click to learn a little bit more about that incredible partnership. And that, of course, being the basis of all the cool innovation that we talked about today. So lots to explore, lots to do in the handout section there. While you're doing that, I am going to give away our final prize giveaway. We have a $250 Amazon gift card going out to someone who is here live and present at the webinar. A reminder that we will be following up with you after we wrap, so stay tuned for that. All right, our winner of a $250 Amazon gift card today is Kristen Cornelia from Massachusetts. Kristen Cornelia from Massachusetts. Cornelia. Kristen, you've won from Massachusetts. Congratulations. As I said, we'll follow up with you after we wrap. All right, well, with that, on behalf of the Smart Brief team, I want to thank Salesforce and Accenture for making this webinar possible. What an incredible conversation we got to have today. A big thank you to all of our speakers. Really, Matt, Nick, and Brett, you each brought such interesting insights. And I really do, I meant it, when I said getting to sort of step away from the more formal versions of webinars and just get to have a conversation is my absolute favorite thing to do. So I want to thank all of you for doing that. It's not always easy to sort of find those conversations and move away from the slides, right? We all like a good slide presentation, but it's really fun and engaging. And I think that we got to see where our speakers were leaning into different topics that they wanted to explore today. So that was really fun for me as well. On that note, my biggest thank you, as always, is going to go to everyone here with us for joining in, for helping us direct that conversation by asking those questions, for participating in the discussion today. And that really is an incredible part of why we have webinars like this, because there's lots to learn and lots to know, and that it's changing all the time. And the way that we stay up to date on these changes is by participating in webinars where we get to share and collaborate our learning and our understanding, and maybe stretch the boundaries of both of those things a little bit together. So big thanks to everyone here. I hope that I'll get to see all of you at a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks all.